Welcome or welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at how poor sleep sabotages metabolisms and give you some real solutions to fix it. So I'm Charlene Stiles, holistic nutritionist, life coach, and metabolism mechanic.
And I'm Cheryl Gordon. I educate midlife women about losing weight and feeling stronger and sleeping better with the tools of yoga and mindfulness. This is episode 5 in our series Midlife Reset. So for me, this is a huge and really important topic. For a deeper dive, Charlene and I will be offering a 4-part course later this year. So be sure to sign up for our newsletters. We'll give the websites in the show notes. You don't want to miss the launch of all of that.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And the big question of the day, Cheryl, is how did you sleep last night?
Well, I sleep better now than I did 10 years ago, believe it or not. In the perimenopause years, it became such a struggle to get to sleep, which I later learned has a name. It's called delayed onset sleep disorder. And then even to stay asleep, the classic insomnia.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I lived through it too. And it only gets worse the more that we lie there, like wide awake, and then we're stressing about how tired we're going to be tomorrow and frustrated that we can't sleep. And then that anxiety and that sleep deprivations just start feeding off each other, right? And our first big clue as to why we're sleeping so poorly and why it contributes to belly fat. So you see, your body isn't getting enough restorative sleep. It registers that stress as a signal. And when you're under stress, whether it's emotional or physical, your body releases more cortisol. And cortisol, as we know, is your body's main stress hormone. And one of its jobs is to store energy, often right around our midsection. So this is our way of our bodies protecting us. And it's not helpful when you're trying to feel lighter and more balanced, obviously. So this isn't just about being tired. It really is a hormonal loop that starts, well, it breaks the cycle. And what breaks the cycle is by starting to understand it. Forgive me, tripping over my own words. Because you see the pattern, you can start to shift it and then gently, without judgment, make some changes.
I wish I would have reached out for help sooner. So here's what my teacher calls a wisdom bomb. The drop in progesterone,
Mm.
which happens during perimenopause, reduces our body's ability to produce melatonin. And progesterone is also required to manufacture GABA. This is a neurotransmitter that induces a calm state of mind. And incidentally, research shows that somatic, mindful movement like yoga also increases GABA.
So many benefits to yoga. And I think it may also be important here to note, just on the topic of progesterone, it really is the ratio of progesterone to estrogen that makes the biggest amount of difference. So even if our estrogen is typically within range, if the progesterone levels drop too low, which it often does in midlife, that's when the imbalance can really throw off our sleep. So lower progesterone really means that less support for our melatonin production. So the natural sleep-wake rhythm gets disrupted. And then without enough melatonin, it's harder to fall asleep, stay asleep, and then even feel rested in the morning.
And Charlene, I just have to jump in here and say that's exactly what was happening. I was like, probably 5 years away from menopause and didn't recognize what was happening. So that progesterone is so important.
Yeah. And then I think it comes as a mystery, right? Like what is going on here? And then we go through the laundry list of what can be the contributing factors. Um, yeah, and the hormone shifts play a huge part. But also, there's another layer here, which is blood sugar regulation. So I talk about this a lot with my own clients. But if you're experiencing spikes and crashes throughout the day, maybe from skipping meals or eating even too many refined carbs or carbs by themselves or constant snacking, this can all mess with our insulin regulation. And then when the blood sugar crashes in the night, the body releases the stress signals that jolt us awake. So while we often think of sleep as, maybe just our bedtime routines, like how we're preparing for bed, it really is a full day hormonal conversation from what you eat, to how your hormones are dancing together behind the scenes. It's very
Mhm.
intricate process.
Yeah. And sleep interruption. A lot of my clients report that they sleep for a few hours and then they wake up and can't get back to sleep. So that's sleep interruption. Um, One thing I'd really like to assure people who are listening is that you are completely normal if this is happening. I mean, this is a huge topic. We'll go a lot more deeply into this in our course, but we cycle through approximately 90-minute sleep waves all night long. We start to relax, we sink into deep sleep, we come up through REM, rapid eye movement, that's when you dream, and then you almost wake up and then you sink back down. So there's a wave all throughout the evening. So for the first wave, maybe first two or three waves, remember they're around approximately 90 minutes each. You're so physically exhausted from your day. When you start to come up out of your REM sleep, you don't come to full consciousness. You're still kind of comatose. But if you're having those spikes in those jolts awake you talked about, Charlene, or if you have a lot of accumulated stress and worries on your mind, that's enough to wake you up as you come up out of REM sleep. Oh, good, you're not solid asleep anymore. By the way, we have so much we need you to play about. So that's why my brain is cuckoo at 3 a.m.
Yeah. And the mind's job is indulgent, right? It wants to be active and be put to work. So, oh, that whole waking up at 3 o'clock and having that brain is, it's definitely a whole mood. And here's why that time of night matters so much. So, most of our most important, did I say that right? There's a lot of most in there. Some of the most important repair work your body does happens in the middle of the night hours, especially when we're cycling through those deep sleep states that you were talking about earlier. So, this is when our brain is consolidating our memories, organizing our thoughts, cleaning out the waste, and going through something called the glymphatic system. So it's kind of like this nightly ritual of a cleanse or a rinse cycle, if you will, for our brain. And our digestive system is also doing its own version of house cleaning during this time. It's flushing out what's no longer needed. We're supporting liver detox pathways and helping the body to regulate blood sugar and hormone and balance hormones for the next day. So when these rhythms, these natural rhythms get disrupted, whether it's from stress or from our own hormonal imbalance or these blood sugar dips that we talked about, not only do you wake up feeling like groggy or foggy, but your body also misses out on this really crucial overnight reset. And that's why we say sleep is so much more than just rest itself. It really is our repair, our regulation, and our reset all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, and if you haven't already caught episode number 4, which was the stress weight connection, you want to go back as there's more details about what Charlene's talking about. So let's talk solutions. We promised we'd show how to get back on track, Charlene.
Yes. Um, as being a nutritionist, we have to talk about food because what you eat is going to affect how we sleep. So, one of the biggest things that I see in midlife women is skipping meals or going really long periods of time without eating, and particularly in the afternoon. And I think it's also common that a lot of women say they're not hungry in the morning, so they delay eating till much later. So these kind of patterns can really tank our blood sugar, which sets up for these evening cravings and that late night snacking. And then those dreaded, what we just talked about, the 3 a.m. wake up calls and active brain firing off. So what's the first step to rectify this? Let's look at balancing blood sugar during the day. And that simply means eating protein, healthy fats, and fiber at every meal, so complex carbohydrates, especially at breakfast, and not skipping breakfast. So, even if you're not hungry in the morning, that's a sign that your metabolism may need some love and perhaps some reconditioning. And then, while we're on the topic of nutrients, let's not forget about magnesium. So, you may know that magnesium is one of the most common deficiencies, at least well, it's a global problem because it's not in our soil, so it's not in our foods, and it's responsible for so many enzymatic reactions in our body. So it is really essential for calming the nervous system, relaxing our muscles, supporting the melatonin production that we talked about, and even helping us regulate blood sugar. So you can think of magnesium as our body's natural kind of chill pill. And you can get it in food, you can get it from leafy greens, seeds, and nuts, and whole grains. Or in many cases, you may want to supplement if you feel the need. So, especially in the evening to help wind down. And remember, not all forms of magnesium do the same thing. So, we may have to talk about that in a future episode, Cheryl. Yes, it's very complex. And I think often mistaken, like you just grab a form of magnesium thinking it's going to do all the things for you, but they all do different things. Anyway, um, let's also just wrap this up here by when we're talking about food is to try to avoid heavier meals in the evening or sugar late at night. So our digestive system needs time to wind down too. So eating too close to bedtime can interfere with our deep sleep because the body is too busy trying to process and digest what it's just taking in when it should actually be resting and restoring.
Mhm. So many of my friends just say, oh, well, I don't sleep well, but it's not okay to sleep like crap. You really need to make your health a priority. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a four-part video series coming up. But right now on my website, there are several videos and audio tracks to help with sleep. I'll put that link in the show notes. And getting back to what you mentioned earlier, Charlene, good sleep is a whole day in the making. I wanted to throw in a few practical pointers to help people sleep better as soon as possible. So my first pointer is good sleep begins in the morning. For many of us, we have to limit caffeine. That's a whole other conversation, but even one or two coffees in the morning can have an effect. But for a lot of us, what we can do is we can get daylight exposure within 30 minutes of getting out of bed. Preferably that's 2 hours after the sun has risen. So there's a unique combination of yellow and blue light during when the sun is still at that lower angle. And this communicates to a really primal part of your brain, signaling it's time to get active. So if you can get outside as little as 10 minutes, it doesn't work through a window really, but if you can get outside, give the puppy a quick pee, whatever you can do, that will really help to get the hormones that we've been talking about all through this podcast into the right place. My second tip is invest in planning your day. Many of you were probably big bosses in your careers. You probably, buy, sell, trade. And even if you didn't have a big fat job like that, chances are you raised a family or organized your house. And you have to take those planning skills that you've developed and prioritize what will get your attention today and where you may need to say no. So planning every day, just like you were a boss, helps you head off problems at the pass. And then wherever possible, instead of you can take those planning skills, use them. I'm going to need a snack here. I'm going to need to make sure I have this ready for my meeting or, to do whatever. Normally we're just so distracted by maybe scrolling on our news feed or someone else's conversation that we're not paying attention to what we need to plan for our day. So focus your priorities. It creates a feeling of safety in your nervous system that actually shows up in the middle of the night. So make sure you plan like a big boss. My third little bit of advice is physical movement. Moving flushes inflammatory compounds. The chronic stress, that cortisol we're always talking about, it can become endotoxic in your system. When this builds up, it can create joint pain, detract from your feelings of well-being, even increase your risk of chronic disease. So if you have aches and pains that wake you up in the middle of the night, when you're tossing and turning, more physical movement during the day. Shameless shout out for yoga here because it's so gentle and it can be very mindful. Hits you on so many different levels. Anyway, moving on to point 4, light. In the natural world, where most of our wiring was settled down, the light would fade naturally towards bedtime. So you can make sure you're working with your natural wiring by avoiding overhead lights 2 hours prior to bed. So many of us are still working in our offices, or we're still working in the kitchen to finish up the dishes, and we've got the overhead lights all on. Can you do something different so you don't have overhead lights 2 hours before bed? And electronic screens, that means checking your feed, checking your email, just, doing one more thing, avoiding your electronic screens 1 hour before bed. So melatonin is released naturally as the sun sets, if we're in a natural environment. And the primal part of your brain is still absorbing directions from the light sources that come from above you. So too much light or the wrong kind of light is very confusing for the brain. And my last, and thank you for sticking with me all this way, Charlene, do execute a relaxing regimen before bed. And you'll know the best. I have a little puzzle, all these different pieces I put together. Magnesium is one piece. But maybe it's a bath, maybe it's reading, maybe it's some stretching, maybe it's some meditating. Whatever you need, recognize that the time assigned for your sleep is sacrosanct. So we don't want to be trying to get one more load of laundry done. We don't want to be scrolling our feeds. We don't want to be trying to get some work done. Sleep is a priority. So if it's elusive for you, and it is for many women our age, invest in practices that support non-sleep deep rest. These practices are things like meditation or restorative yoga or breathing consciously. And a lot of these practices can be done right in bed, even in the middle of the night. So if you're not able to get back to sleep, you've got sleep interruption, you can actually still get some of those restorative benefits that Charlene talked about, even though you're not in dead sleep. And this, knowing that you have the tools of non-sleep deep rest, this can so alleviate your anxiety around sleeplessness. Research shows that these practices can benefit our brains and bodies similar to actual sleep, and perhaps even more effective in some cases.
Yeah. And just to tag on to that last point there, it's the way that I like to look at the wind down phase is like we're seducing our body into what's next rather than like going 100 miles an hour and then slamming on the brakes and then just flopping into bed. Like there's no allure to, setting up for what's coming next. So,
And I love the way you, sorry, Charlene, but I just love the way you said seducing, because really I would like us to treat our bodies and ourselves like you had a new lover. How much
oh,
attention and how much, how much affection would you lavish on somebody when you're just falling in love? Do that for yourself, girlfriend.
oh man, that's the totally sidebar here, but oh my gosh, here we go. Um, yeah, and I was saying I've said this to a couple clients this week, like if you had to, rather than look at how you supporting your body to lose weight, like rather than looking at it through that lens, because most of the people that are coming to me are coming to lose weight. But if you had to look at it as what am I going to do and eat in a way that's going to support my nervous system and my gut, like wouldn't we make totally different change like choices than just about weight loss, right? Because we've been conditioned for so long in inaccurate ways of to just eat less and exercise more. And there's so much more to it, particularly in midlife, as we're discovering here in this series. Anyhow, I want to thank you for those tips. And what I will say is like these, what we're talking about here, people, you may have heard about this before. It may not seem like anything new. So these practices may seem very simple on the surface, but the real magic happens when we turn these little simple tidbits of information into habits, when we actually take the knowledge and embody it. So that's when everything really starts to click. And then that's how we realize and can feel how these small, little kind of practical common sense steps can actually shift our well-being, shift our trajectory, our life, how we're feeling, shift our body. So you don't need to overhaul everything all at once to sleep better. What if you just start with one or two simple little changes or shifts and then stack on top of there once those things become habits, and let your body show you what it's been craving all along.
And that's a great suggestion, Charlene. I echo it 150%. Don't try to do all the things. I listened to this podcast and I'm going to sleep better by tonight.
Mm.
Choose one thing. Maybe I'm going to get that early morning sunlight, or maybe I'm going to choose to add more protein at breakfast or something like that. Work on that for a week or more until it really feels normal in your body. Your nervous system embraces how it feels. Now your nervous system is going to support you and keep making that habit sustainable. And remember, this is a lifetime project. I know you want to lose the weight or you want to feel better right now. You want to sleep better right now. But to make it sustainable, like Charlene says, just little steps. And next thing you know, you look back a month from now and you're really quite a bit down the green by now.
Yeah. And I think it might be worth just saying here that it's never just one thing. It's not just one magic bullet. It's a combination and collection of these, gradual little shifts. And at different stages in our life, we learn different things and we are ready to take on the next step. So hopefully you find this information helpful and you can employ one new step here that can help you along your path and your journey to sleeping better and shedding the weight that we've been talking about. So to wrap this up, you can find more resources on either of our websites. So I'm at www.purenaturalhealth.ca. You can find Cheryl at cherylgordonyt.com. So please stick around. Feel free to subscribe to our channel or comment below. This really helps us. And let us know how this Empress journey is really unfolding and whether any of these topics affect you too. And in the next episode, easy for me to say, we're going to be talking about hydration. I know that sounds very basic and very simple, but this is really the secret weapon to detox and weight loss. So we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks, Charlene.
Bye for now.